You know, whenever we picture the future of medical breakthroughs, especially stuff related to the brain and the nervous system, we instantly imagine like the distant future.
Oh, absolutely. Sci-fi stuff.
Right. We picture these highly advanced AI-driven futuristic robotics, exoskeletons, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the glossy movie version of medicine.
Exactly. But what if the key to helping thousands of stroke survivors regain their physical independence isn't some brand new cutting edge invention at all?
Hmm.
What if the technology that can literally, get people back on their feet actually dates all the way back to 1961?
Yeah, it perfectly illustrates how sometimes the most profound innovations are just hiding in plain sight. We just have to look at them through a modern lens, I mean.
Hmm.
The concept we're exploring today is this brilliant intersection of neurology and biomechanical engineering, and it relies on an idea that was just decades ahead of its time.
Decades. And today we are looking at a stack of sources that unpack exactly how this works. Our main guide for this deep dive is this very comprehensive, really rigorous 2004 systematic review.
A heavy hitter of a paper.
Oh, totally. It was published in the journal Artificial Organs, conducted by a team of Dutch scientists, Kottink and colleagues, working out of Roessingh Research and Development over in the Netherlands.
Right.
But because systematic reviews can be, well, incredibly dense.
Just endless tables of p-values.
Yeah, p-values, confidence intervals, you name it. Because of that, we're pairing it with a highly accessible medical blog post that translates all those hard clinical findings into, real-world emotional impact.
Which is so important. The review gives us the rigorous methodology and the hard data, sure, but the blog post reminds us of the human element, the actual lived experience of the patients who are dealing with the aftermath of a stroke.
So our mission today is to explore those mechanics, crunch the hard data, and really understand the human impact of using a technology called functional electrical stimulation, or FES, to treat this really debilitating condition known as foot drop in stroke patients. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Before we dive into the engineering of the actual solution, we need to understand the physical and emotional barrier that these patients are facing every single time they just try to stand up.
Right. And to grasp the sheer scale of this barrier, the researchers outlined the scope of the problem in the Netherlands alone.
Just one country.
Just one country. At the time of the study, they note there are about 120,000 stroke survivors in the country.
Wow.
And out of that population, a staggering 75%, so 90,000 people, only recover partially from their stroke.
That is a massive population dealing with lingering chronic effects. I mean, 90,000 people just in the Netherlands.
It is. And of those 90,000 people with partial recovery, an estimated 20% suffer from a specific motor impairment called dropped foot.
Okay.
That means roughly 18,000 people, just in that one European country, are dealing with a specific biomechanical failure.
Man, so the sources outline the mechanics of drop foot, but I want to break down what is actually happening in the nervous system here. Because when a patient tries to take a step, the foot simply won't lift.
Right. Mechanically, it's the inability to dorsiflex the ankle.
It's dorsiflex.
Yeah. Dorsiflexion is the movement where you pull your toes upward toward your shin.
Oh, okay.
When you walk, you naturally do this to clear your foot off the ground as your leg swings forward. You don't even think about it.
Right. Otherwise, you just scrape your toes.
Exactly. In a healthy nervous system, the brain sends a signal down the spinal cord, out to the peripheral nerves in the leg, telling those specific muscles to contract.
The wiring works?
The wiring works beautifully. But a stroke causes what we call an upper motor neuron lesion.
Okay.
The brain is damaged, so the signal is either weak, corrupted, or completely blocked by the time it tries to reach the leg. The muscles themselves are fine. The nerves in the leg are fine. But the command center is offline.
So the patient literally cannot lift their foot, meaning their toes just drag on the ground during a step. And the clinical description of how patients adapt to this is just, it's brutal.
It really is.
The sources detail how they essentially have to invent a completely new way of walking just to avoid tripping over their own feet.
Yeah, the human body is incredibly adaptive, but those adaptations come at a serious cost. Because the foot won't lift, the patient adopts what is clinically called an equine gait.
Equine, like a horse.
Exactly like a horse.
Right.
It's termed that because it mimics the way a horse trots. They have to lift their entire knee unnaturally high just to get those dropping toes to clear the floor.
Ugh, that sounds exhausting.
Oh, it is. Alternatively, they might hike their hip up on one side or swing their entire leg out wide in a semicircle. That's a compensatory movement called circumduction.
Circumduction. Right. And reading the blog post, you really get a sense of how exhausting that must be. The author points out that every single step becomes this conscious physical battle.
Because you're fighting your own body.
Yes. The energy required to hike your hip or swing your leg wide for every single stride is immense. But beyond the physical exertion, there's a profound psychological toll, too.
Yeah.
The constant looming risk of stumbling. I mean, it makes patients lose their confidence. They start staying indoors more. They stop going to the grocery store or visiting friends.
Their world shrinks.
Their entire world just shrinks to the size of their living room.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is that the conventional treatment for the standard of care that doctors have prescribed for decades, doesn't actually address the underlying biology or that exhaustion at all.
No, it doesn't. The standard treatment is an AFO, an ankle-foot orthosis.
Right.
Basically, it's a custom-fitted plastic splint that you wedge inside your shoe to mechanically lock the ankle at a 90-degree angle.
Just rigid plastic.
Yeah, the toes physically cannot drop because the plastic holds them up. But it sounds like being forced to walk in a rigid ski boot all day long.
That's a great analogy. And worse, a ski boot that forces the rest of your kinetic chain to work overtime.
How do you mean?
Well, walking is not a static process, right? It's a highly dynamic, fluid motion that relies on a really complex transfer of energy from the ankle through the knee all the way up to the hip.
Right, it's a chain reaction.
Exactly. When you lock the ankle joint into one fixed position with an AFO, you disrupt that entire chain.
Oh, I see.
The AFO doesn't actively engage the patient's muscles. It just freezes them. And that leads to muscle atrophy over time because those muscles are no longer being asked to do any work at all.
So if freezing the joint causes so many downstream issues, the solution has to be dynamic, which brings us to functional electrical stimulation, FES.
Yes.
The systematic review notes that a researcher named Liberson pioneered this exact method way back in 1961.
It's incredible. Liberson realized a fundamental truth about this specific type of stroke impairment. The wiring in the leg itself is completely intact.
Like you said earlier, the muscles and nerves are fine.
Right. The peroneal nerve, there's a peripheral nerve responsible for controlling the muscles that lift the foot, is still perfectly capable of firing. It's just waiting for a signal from the damaged brain that never arrives.
Just waiting on hold.
Basically, yes. So Liberson theorized that if the brain couldn't send the electrical signal, well, we could just supply that electrical pulse externally.
The engineering schematic for how this actually syncs with the human body is what really caught my attention. Because a machine from 1961 has to know the exact millisecond to fire to mimic a natural gait, right?
Yeah, and it does it through a remarkably elegant feedback loop.
How does it work?
So the system uses a small pressure switch placed inside the heel of the patient's shoe.
Okay, under the heel.
Right. Then, electrodes are placed on the surface of the skin, just over the peroneal nerve near the knee. When the patient shifts their weight and lifts their heel to initiate a step, the pressure switch in the shoe releases.
Oh, so it knows the foot is lifting.
Exactly. That instant release triggers the stimulator. It sends a precise electrical pulse to the nerve, which causes an active biological muscle contraction.
Wow.
This results in both dorsiflexion and eversion.
Eversion.
Eversion means lifting the foot and slightly turning it outward to keep it balanced.
That is wild. And then, the moment the heel strikes the floor again at the end of the stride, the switch compresses, the stimulation turns off, and the foot can relax and absorb the impact of the ground naturally.
You've got it.
It's like power steering for human walking.
I love that.
It kicks in to provide the assist exactly when you need it, and then it completely gets out of the way when you don't.
Exactly. And just like power steering, if the actual engine, in this case, the peripheral nerve, is completely dead, no amount of assist is going to turn the wheels.
Right. The leg wiring has to work.
It has to be intact. But for those with an intact nerve, the theoretical advantages over a static plastic splint are just immense.
Because it's biological.
Exactly. Because the FES system is actually making the patient's own muscles contract, it actively stimulates blood circulation in the leg. It prevents that muscle atrophy caused by plastic braces.
Oh, that makes sense. Use it or lose it.
Very much so. Furthermore, shocking the peripheral nerve sends a volley of sensory feedback signals back up the spinal cord to the brain, which is heavily theorized to encourage neuroplasticity and actually aid in long-term rehabilitation.
See, I'm looking at this list of benefits, right? Active muscle contraction, increased blood flow, a more natural gait that doesn't require hiking the hip, plus it's cosmetically hidden under clothing, unlike a bulky plastic brace.
Right.
So I have to push back a little here. why isn't every single stroke patient with foot drop wearing one right now?
Well, the systematic review is very transparent about the limitations of surface-level stimulation.
Okay.
First, as we established, the peripheral nerve and the muscles that raise the foot cannot be denervated. If the patient has lower motor neuron damage, meaning the actual nerve in the leg is dead, the biological hardware cannot receive the electrical signal.
Right. You can't jumpstart a broken wire.
Exactly. The patient also has to be highly motivated and capable of standing and walking with at least minimal assistance.
But even for the ideal candidates, sticking electrodes to your leg every morning doesn't sound like entirely frictionless.
Oh, it's incredibly finicky.
Mm.
Passing an electrical current through the skin can cause severe tissue irritation and pain for a subset of users.
Yikes.
Yeah. And beyond the physical discomfort, surface electrodes are notoriously sensitive to exact placement.
Oh, I bet.
If a patient is off by even a millimeter when they apply the sticky pads in the morning, the current hits the wrong part of the nerve.
What happens then?
Instead of lifting straight up, the foot might twist violently outward or inward, completely destabilizing the patient.
Oh, wow. That seems like it would completely negate the confidence-building aspect of the device if you're constantly worried your foot is going to twist out from under you in the grocery store.
Which is precisely why the review mentions the field's necessary evolution toward implantable systems.
Like surgical implants.
Yes. To bypass the skin irritation and the daily hassle of placing electrodes, surgeons can implant a stimulator directly onto the nerve.
Wow. Okay.
A two-channel implantable system, for instance, provides separate control of the deep and superficial branches of the peroneal nerve. This allows clinicians to perfectly tune the balance of the foot's lift and erosion, locking in the ideal stimulation permanently without the patient ever having to measure electrode placement again.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. We have a clever device, sure.
Yep.
But the surface version is a daily hassle that causes skin irritation, and the alternative requires literal surgery to implant a device onto a nerve.
Right.
Is the functional payoff actually worth that level of intervention? I mean, this is where the Dutch scientist data comes into play, right?
This is exactly where the data shines. The researchers scoured the literature and narrowed it down to 8 comparative studies that met their strict criteria for analyzing the orthotic effect of FES.
Okay, 8 studies.
And they looked at a total of 203 stroke patients. Now, it's vital to note the demographic here.
Why is that?
176 of these patients were in the chronic stage of stroke recovery, meaning they were more than 6 months out from their initial stroke.
Ah, which is the widely accepted clinical window where natural, spontaneous healing of the brain has pretty much plateaued.
Precisely. If a patient is 6 months post-stroke, they generally are not going to wake up the next morning with suddenly improved motor function on their own.
Right. So you know the device is doing the work.
Exactly. Any improvements seen in this chronic group can confidently be attributed to the intervention.
Okay.
The researchers scored the methodological quality of these studies on a 19-point scale, looking for rigorous controls, blinding where possible, and objective outcome measures.
How would they score?
The scores ranged from 8 to 18, with the gold standards being a randomized controlled trial by Burridge and a crossover study by Granite. Both of those scored 18 out of 19.
Almost perfect. And out of all these meticulously scored studies, this headline statistic that jumps right off the page for me is the improvement in walking speed.
Yeah, it's significant.
When they pooled the data across the trials, they found that FES improved walking speed by an average of 0.13 meters per second. That equates to a 38% gain in speed. But I look at that number, 0.13 meters a second, and it sounds incredibly small.
It does sound small on paper.
Right. Is a fraction of a meter per second actually worth undergoing surgery for an implant?
To understand why a fraction of a meter is life-altering, we have to look at how rehabilitation specialists classify walking handicap.
Okay, lay it on me.
The review cites a foundational classification by Perry et al., which establishes specific velocity thresholds for independence.
Okay.
To be classified as an unlimited community walker, someone who can confidently navigate outside their home, handle uneven terrain, and cross streets safely, a person needs a walking speed of roughly 0.8 meters per second.
Ah. So when your baseline speed is incredibly slow because you're laboriously hiking your hip with every step, that tiny 0.13 boost is the critical gap between classifications.
It is the difference between being a household walker and a community walker.
That's huge.
It is. Some of the specific studies in the review, like those by Waters and Bogataj, showed improvements of 0.21 to 0.21 meters per second.
So even higher than the average.
Right. If a patient is stuck at 0.6 meters per second, a 0.2 boost pushes them over that 0.8 threshold.
Wow.
It is the literal difference between being stranded on a sidewalk, terrified the crosswalk light will change before you make it, and safely crossing a busy street. It expands the entire radius of their world.
So for you listening, you might think 0.13 meters a second sounds tiny. But in the real world, that's the difference between being stranded on a curb and safely crossing a street. The speed is crucial, but the review also measures the sheer exhaustion factor we talked about earlier, right?
Yes. They measure this using the Physiological Cost Index, or PCI.
PCI.
Think of PCI as the clinical measurement of a human's fuel economy.
Oh, I like that.
It's calculated by taking the patient's working heart rate and dividing it by their walking speed. So clinicians are measuring exactly how many heartbeats it costs the body to move 1 single meter.
Okay, so a lower number is better. Just like you want to burn fewer gallons of gas to travel a mile.
Exactly. In the highest rated study, the randomized controlled trial by Burge patients using FES saw their PCI improve by nearly 25%.
A quarter.
A quarter. Because the device was actively lifting the foot and eliminating that exhausting equine gait, the patients were walking significantly faster, and it was costing their cardiovascular system 25% less effort to do so.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. The data on speed and energy is great, but the ultimate test of any medical device is whether the patient actually tolerates it, right?
Always.
Out of 203 total patients across all these varied trials, only 6 people dropped out.
It's amazing.
6. For a medical device trial involving daily application, skin irritation, and finicky equipment, that is an astonishingly low dropout rate. And the review points out that in multiple studies, most patients just kept using the device at home after the trial officially ended.
Yeah, that behavioral data speaks volumes. Despite the documented hassles of electrode placement or mild discomfort, the functional benefit, the tangible return of their mobility and confidence was so profound that they actively fought to keep the device in their daily lives.
This overwhelming patient satisfaction brings up a really crucial distinction in the systematic review.
Let's hear it.
Does this electrical stimulation actually cure the foot drop over time? I mean, if you wear the device for a year, forcing the muscles to fire and sending those signals back to the brain, does the brain eventually relearn how to do it on its own?
Right. This touches on the fundamental clinical difference between a therapeutic effect and an orthotic effect.
What's the difference?
A therapeutic effect, often called a carryover or training effect, means the device actually heals or trains the nervous system.
Okay.
The improved walking speed and muscle control would remain even after you completely turn the stimulator off.
That makes sense. And orthotic.
An orthotic effect means the device acts as a functional crutch. The improvement only exists while the machine is actively sending the electrical pulse.
Ah, okay. So it's the difference between getting OSIC eye surgery versus wearing prescription glasses.
That is a perfect way to look at it.
OSIC is therapeutic. It fixes the eye. The FES seems more like glasses. When you have them on, you can see perfectly. The moment you take them off, your vision is blurry again.
The review leans heavily toward the glasses analogy.
Okay.
Now, the authors acknowledge that some or their studies, including a specific comparative study by a researcher named Mann, who looked at FES against standard AFO splints, did hint at a potential therapeutic training effect.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There were isolated observations of reduced muscle spasticity and a slight increase in voluntary control when the device is off.
But the pooled data from the systematic review doesn't support that as a guarantee.
No, it does not. When Kottink and his colleagues subjected the data to rigorous methodological scrutiny, they concluded there is no hard, statistically convincing evidence for a permanent therapeutic carryover effect. The primary, definitively proven benefit is orthotic.
Wow. So the scientific verdict is that this technology is not a cure for stroke damage.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to realize why an orthotic effect is still a monumental medical victory.
How so?
Remember the specific demographic of the 203 patients studied. These are chronic stroke survivors.
All right, the 6-month plateau.
Their natural biological recovery has plateaued. Conventional physical therapy is no longer yielding significant daily gains. Their nervous systems have reached a permanent stalemate.
Yes.
Even if it is just an orthotic effect, FES gives them an immediate, measurable daily capability that they otherwise would never experience again.
And that perfectly echoes the emotional core of the medical blog post. I mean, the author makes the compelling case that for the patient, the clinical distinction between a cure and a crutch is practically meaningless when they're just trying to walk down the driveway to get the mail.
Exactly. They just want to walk.
It's about more movement, more confidence, and more independence right now. If a device lets you walk 38% faster today without exhausting your heart, It is a massive success today.
It entirely removes the physical barrier to participation in daily life.
Yeah.
And the fact that we can achieve that independence by dynamically hacking into the body's own electrical system rather than just bracing a joint with static plastic represents a profound philosophical shift in how we approach rehabilitation engineering.
So what does this all mean? If we take a step back and look at this entire journey, we started with the debilitating reality of foot drop, where a severed communication line in the brain turns every single step into a conscious, exhausting battle.
Right.
We looked back to the sheer ingenuity of Liberson in 1961, who realized that if the brain's command center was offline, we could just externally power the intact wiring in the leg.
A visionary idea.
Truly. And we followed that premise all the way to 2004, where this Dutch systematic review proved, with rigorous data, that this technology drastically improves energy efficiency and increases walking speed by 38%.
It is a testament to the power of continuous incremental refinement. The underlying biological concept hasn't fundamentally changed in over 60 years,
Right.
but our ability to study it, quantify its exact impact on the cardiovascular system, and refine its application, especially the transition toward highly selective implantable systems, has turned a clever theoretical idea into a highly reliable, life-changing clinical tool.
For you, listening to this deep dive, it's a powerful reminder that sometimes the best medical advancements aren't about reinventing the wheel.
No, they're really not.
They aren't always about discovering a brand new pharmaceutical compound or building a sci-fi robotic exoskeleton from scratch. Sometimes it's about looking closely at the biology we already have, understanding exactly where the communication breakdown occurred, and simply building an electrical bridge to bypass the damage.
Yeah.
It's about optimizing existing technology to support our incredible biology when it fails.
This raises an important question, though.
Oh.
If a relatively simple timed electrical pulse from a heel switch can step in to replace the incredibly complex neural signaling required for human gait, what else is possible?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
What other severed biological connections might be bridged by smart wearable tech in the coming decades? Could the future of rehabilitation rely entirely on mapping and actively hacking our own nervous systems?
That is an amazing thought to leave on. Maybe the medical future isn't about replacing the human body with robotics, but rather becoming the master electricians of our own biology, seamlessly fixing the wiring when the power goes out. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the incredible science of walking again. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and we'll catch you on the next one.